Um, okay, so I have here Brian accuses Mike of being a butt plug. Not exactly. I just remember that line stood out to me. Um, and I do really love Brian. That's the thing is Brian always gets painted in, I think, the narcissistic way. Like he's greedy, he only wants sex, like he doesn't care about others, but he does really. Want to listen to this Ivory Tower Boiler Room or True Crime and Academia episode ad free? Head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room to listen to all of our podcast episodes without any ads. You get access to our video episodes, our bonus episodes, and even more exclusive content, including merchandise. It only starts at $5 a month. So head on over to our Patreon. Again, it's patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room. And while you're at it, you know what would be such a help is if you could rate and review the Ivory Tower Boiler Room on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And make sure that you follow us and share out our podcast to all of your friends. It truly does help. And I want to thank you all. It means so much that you're listening to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. I hope that you enjoy this episode. Just a brief message before what I know you all are going to absolutely love as an episode today. I have such a great guest. There are 2 book clubs going on during this spooky season. Happy spooky season, everyone. I am hosting the Ivory Tower Boiler Room Book Club. We are reading Parachute Women by Elizabeth Winder. It is all about the women behind the Rolling Stones and even the invention of rock and roll's success. And then Mary DePippi, the host of True Crime and Academia, is reading Haunted: Asylums, Prisons, and Sanatoriums by Jamie Davis. So to join both book clubs, you just have to go to patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Each book club has its own membership levels, so each is $4. If you want to join both book clubs, then join the ITBR professor level instead of like joining each book club separately, because for $10 a month, not only do you get both book clubs, you also get all of our bonus audio and video episodes and also our entire video and audio episode catalog, including this episode ad-free. So can't wait to see you all. The deadline to join both book clubs is October 20th. That's because Mary and myself, we have to just make sure that we coordinate the private Zoom session that we'll have with all our book club members. So I can't wait to see who's in the book club and get your hands on Parachute Women and Haunted for our book clubs. And then also, I'm now offering consulting. So everyone out there, if you know someone who has college admission essay questions, they're not sure where to start with the undergraduate college process, they have financial questions about college. I was lucky enough and had a lot of financial conversations about loans, and I actually didn't have any loans from my college experience, and I was able to get scholarships. So I can help you with that. I can help with graduate school questions, graduate school thesis editing, dissertation editing, podcast questions, help with your podcast, starting a podcast, social media branding questions. I'm here for your services. So my initial consultation fee is only $30 and it's a 1-hour Zoom. So head to patreon.com/ Ivory Tower Boiler Room and you'll see that consultation option. Okay, without further ado, here is today's episode. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and welcome back to ITBR Rewatches Queer as Folk, Season 1, Episode 2. I am joined with a good friend of mine, Matt Skallerud. Hi, Matt.
How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so glad you're doing this because I consider you the powerhouse of LGBTQ media and social media, but also I think you're going to have some really interesting perspectives with what you were doing with media and the LGBTQ community when this show was premiering in 2000. So,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, you're the vanguard of all things, queer media in my eyes. But Matt is the president. Everyone's gonna be like, wait, what is Matt Andrew? Don't bury the lead. What does Matt do? So Matt is the president of Pink Media, and he specializes in LGBTQ plus online marketing, targeting gay and lesbians via content marketing, social media, um, smartphone apps. In 1995, this is what I really am eager to hear you discuss, Matt. He
yeah,
launched gaywire.com, which became one of the top three LGBTQ websites worldwide. And I think that'll be very interesting when we open up episode 2 with what's happening in our
yeah.
first scene. So, welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Very excited to have you. And I know you just came back from, if you want to tell everyone out there, there was a really exciting conference you were a part of or
Yeah, it
event.
was interesting. It was interesting. It was in Dallas, and it was kind of a blend of celebrity LGBTQ celebrities and business. So that's how they were trying to give it more like a gay South by Southwest feel. And but they had some amazing celebrities there. India Moore was there on stage, and she came on stage with her mother, which was really a it was great to see. And Billy Eichner and
Oh,
Anthony, I forget his last name, but and I should know. But he was from Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and he's kind of their food expert, and he was amazingly animated as he did a whole cooking thing up there as well.
oh, that's so exciting. Well, I think to remind the audience, so episode 1, when I was with Christian Garcia, it ended with Justin being dropped off at school by the erratic Brian. Uh,
Yep.
Brian gets, I think, even more layers in this episode, but he like drives off with his, best friend Mikey. And then we're just left with Justin in his school environment, and then Brian and Mikey entering back into their late 20s friend group, and how the late 20s, early 30s is basically um a death in the queer community of society. Or I keep hearing this every episode because I just turned 31, Matt, and I'm like, wait, I can't believe that Brian is 29 and
Yeah,
he thinks that he is past his prime. Like
I know.
it is interesting what's happening with age. But so when did you, before we just jump right into episode 2,
Yeah.
when did you first see Queer as Folk, the Showtime show?
Oh, well, the show, I mean, and then, just so that everybody is absolutely clear, there was the original, and I had watched that a few years before. So that was, I think it was based in Manchester. And instead of Brian Kinney, his name was Stuart. The guy you feel for, love, and is a villain at the same time. And, and so then when we knew that, Showtime was coming out with this new series, they were really hyping the heck out of it. So I mean, I think I was one of those, because also age wise, I was in my early 30s at that time too. So this was really well timed for me personally and everybody around me in terms of kind of identifying with so much of what they brought to the screen. And it's funny, and it makes you feel a little naked when you're like, oh my God, this is us, and a lot of it felt very real.
And you said to me before we were recording that rewatching and returning to the series, this is the first time you've rewatched episode 2
Yeah.
since you
Yeah.
first saw it premiere.
Actually, the whole series.
Wow.
I don't typically go back and rewatch series too often. Once in a blue moon, but so this one I had not. It was just firmly embedded in my mind as far as the overall impact. So to watch it after it's been really 23 years, and so it was really it does bring back a lot of feelings and so forth. But it's also interesting when you're seeing these people that you've come to learn and you come to know over all those years, through the different seasons. But you're seeing them at the very beginning when their characters were just in development, and they were just kind of getting started in terms of understanding who they were in context of the show.
Well, and I'm just curious with Pink Media or
Yeah,
all of the work, even with Gay Wired, what were you doing in 2000?
yeah. Well, that was the dot com. That was like the height of everything at that point. So So we were riding really high because at that moment then in time, that's when it was really Gaywired, Gay.com, and Planet Out. And there was a group of investors that actually tried to acquire our company at the time, and it didn't finally in the end it didn't work out. But for about a year, we were all trying to do things together. They were pumping money into our company and trying to figure out what, like how we can grow. But it all happened at the same time as this. And I will tell you that Showtime came to us, and Queer as Folk was a huge advertiser of ours through Showtime, and so we were very embedded with a lot of this, both on the business end and, of course, just on the personal side.
Well, and it's been 23 years, like you've said, since it
Yeah.
premiered. Um, have you ever had a chance to meet anyone from the Queer as Folk universe?
Oh, I wish I did, but no. Out of when I'm running around at some of these events, uh, they had not come across my path. We did do some cross promotions with them in New York, probably in 2000, at the Javits Center, where they had this huge, at that time, LGBT expo that they would have every year. So we did a bunch of promotions with them, but at least when I was there, their cast did not come in.
Yeah, and I think I have to correct a cast member's name because just with Thea, I thought it was Thea Gill, but it's not. I think
Oh,
it's Thea. I want to make sure I say it right, but I will confirm that. So just so that actress is not, I want to be respectful. And Michelle, actually, shout out to Michelle who plays Melanie. She follows us now on our social media. So it is, people, the cast is becoming aware of our rewatching. So with all of that said, I want to just jump into episode 2. So, you were at that .com. There's the .com boom right now. It's 2000, and episode 2 begins with, I just love that Ted is watching these hot men on their webcams.
yeah,
And I think 2000, I was still um, in elementary, or I think I had just entered elementary school. But I do remember, though, like the height of the webcam. Like,
yeah,
even I had gotten a webcam to like talk to friends, and it was like such a huge deal. I mean, to think now that we're on Zoom and our um, video and microphone, everything's embedded in the
yeah.
computer. It's just, I think, unfathomable to us back then. So, was that something relating to Ted? Was that something you knew that men were like going onto these webcam sites?
Oh, all of it, absolutely. I think that's what also helped pull a lot of us in, is because it really was on point. It was timely. They're showing a reflection of who we were at that very moment. And I'll tell you, especially when it comes to that whole webcam and streaming video, because all of that was a transition from DVDs and which were really hot, especially in the porn world, and DVDs into streaming, and of course now it's all about OnlyFans and all that. But the evolution, they caught a really great snapshot in time, and just pointing out that the porn industry oftentimes leads the rest of the industry when it comes to certain technologies, and that was a huge one. And so seeing all that was really kind of fun. And of course, as we know, that story arc continues on in future seasons as well.
And this bond that the three of them have, Michael, Emmett, and Ted, I like rewatching this, found it so refreshing how they are always checking in with each other. Like it
Yeah,
really is such a strengthening of their friendship. And I mean, Michael, his manager job at this, almost, it looks like a Walmart. I don't know where he is,
yeah,
but
yeah,
um the nondescript big box store. And he's asked if he can find jockey shorts for this like hot guy. He's like, yeah, that's where it is. And then he kind of knows that the guy is gay. And then
yeah.
like his coworker like uses a slur against this customer because he's with his boyfriend or husband. And um, it does feel that times have shifted in
Mm.
terms of like the acceptable homophobia, or even it like just being that apparent at the workplace. I mean,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
that's my reading, but yeah. What
No,
did you
no,
think was
no.
going on, Matt, with that scene?
Yeah, no, things have changed. Although sadly, we wish that things had changed quicker and all in a straight line of being more positive from that point to where we're at today. But when you see that, it was actually, I thought it made me feel sad, but and I'm sure it did for everybody that watched it, because at the end of that scene, after, and all she did, she just kind of went, did the whole, which was very common back then, when people would just kind of go, I think he is.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Oh, like the flip of the wrist.
yeah, so
Yeah.
she does this whole thing, but then they, when he turns around, they put their, and he realizes they were laughing at, or they felt that they were being laughed at. They just put their stuff down and they were out. And so it made me feel sad, and it was just kind of like one of those things that, you could see something like that even happening today, unfortunately.
Well, and that Michael is even part of
I know.
this acceptable homophobia to try to like save face or the uncomfortability of knowing that he's not out at the workplace. And then, oh, maybe this couple is going to um threaten him coming out, or he has to like play along with the workplace dynamics
Oh
of,
yeah,
putting down the queer person. So, and then we get Emmett, who I forgot like works at a boutique or a clothing store.
yeah.
Um, and okay, so that's where we are with them. Do you have anything else to say about, this trio at the
No,
beginning?
I was just gonna say that, tell you that, like, for years afterwards, Emmett slash I believe his name is Peter Page, but he was probably the most out there. Whenever there were events, whenever there were things, the rest of the cast you wouldn't really see at things, and you wouldn't see him on television and so forth as much. But he was really out there for quite a long time, and so he, in some ways, almost became kind of the face of queer as folk for the rest of us as well.
Well, and I was saying this in episode one that what's so interesting to me is how much backlash the cast was getting from like the mainstream media, especially Larry King. I'm not sure if you remember this, but like
Mhm.
kept pressing the whole cast to come out, like try to find everyone's sexuality.
Oh,
Um, Especially like this would happen with Hal Sparks and Gail Harold, um, who, just said like we're not like our sexuality is not the focus of the series. Like Randy Harrison, like he should be given the voice, or like you said, Peter Page, and then eventually Robert Gant,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I do think Michelle. I want to say she's queer or a lesbian. I think, and I think so is Taya. But I might be, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So it is interesting though how the press was just so, not saying like that's why they weren't always visibly at events, but I have a feeling it was a time where you coming out as an actor, I mean, it's still a bit like there's still a headline in the press with you coming out, but I feel there was the microscope was
Yeah.
really narrowed on all of them.
But you can imagine in the back of their mind, sometimes they were thinking, well, if you're going to play gay on TV, you can be gay, but not too gay. Yet at the same time, Queer as Folk was too gay, and that was the point of it. So perhaps in some ways they just they balanced that, being a little over the top in their performances with just being a bit more reserved in the real world. So I'm not sure.
Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and I'm so excited to shout out the Gay and Lesbian Review, who is helping to sponsor the ITBR podcast. For all of you out there, the Gay and Lesbian Review is a bi monthly magazine where you can discover new things about gay and lesbian literature, history, and culture. And the GL Review publishes essays in a wide range of disciplines, as well as a slew of reviews of books, plays, and movies, and a number of special features, such as artist profiles and their popular art memo column. Each issue of the magazine brings you consistently intelligent, lively, thought provoking articles focused on a unifying theme. For example, their September October issue centers on the theme Cracking the Closet. So, starting in the 19th century, a number of artists and writers found ways to crack the closet by expressing their sexuality between the lines or in the interstices of their work. For example, Ignacio Darnad, who is a friend of the ITBR podcast, he's been on our show, writes all about illustrator J.C. Leyendecker, whose work for Ivory Soap and Arrow Collars gave him plenty of opportunities to draw pictures of well dressed and at times scantily dressed American men. And you also can find an article by Vernon Rosario, who has been on the podcast, and he talks about the quest for sex in the Middle Ages. So, to subscribe, visit glreview.org. That's glreview.org. Click subscribe. So on their website, go all the way over to the right-hand side and you'll see the button subscribe. Click subscribe and enter the promo code ITBR50 because you're getting 50% off your subscription to the print or digital edition of the Gay and Lesbian Review magazine. I can't wait for you all to have your copy of the Gay and Lesbian Review magazine, and make sure that you take a picture when your magazine arrives or when you're reading it online and tag the GL Review on Instagram and ITBR, and we'll share it out in our stories. Enjoy your reading, everyone. Well, and I was just reading for an interview I had done about the Rolling Stones with a friend of the show, Elizabeth Winder, who like looked at all the women behind the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And I was like looking at female rock stars, and Joan Jett, it's seen as queer, but like she's never come out. And they're like, "Why aren't you coming out? Why aren't you coming out?" And she's like, "Just stop asking me. Like, I am who I am." And I
Mhm.
do feel we have to respect, like, I respect that enunciation or that announcement of this is my choice. And yeah, so all of that's to say is then we get this voiceover of Michael. Like somehow I just wrote down he's talking about the allegory of the cave with Socrates. I'm not sure. He always has these like philosophical interludes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that
this
was
reminds me of that philosophy.
yeah, that one there, I think it was lost on me a little bit too. So yeah, I remember hearing that and just kind
Well,
of
it was
tuning
when the
out.
two men were shopping. I'm not sure why the allegory of the cave is coming up, but
Yeah.
hey, the writing, I do have to say, the writing team is very solid. Every time I'm watching these episodes, I feel that they are cohesively linking the voiceover with the action.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I kind of miss that writing in current day TV. That's why I like to rewatch these series from the 2000s.
Yeah.
But okay, so now we get into Brian Kinney, who's
Yeah.
giving his work pitch, which it is interesting though to think about it. Michael is not out, but Brian, it's the complete opposite. It's
Yeah.
like he's the gay icon of his workplace. And that his status is actually like from his sexuality. I wonder, like, do you think that that was realism? Like, did you know those who were out like that, who the whole workplace looked up to them because they were gay? Like, oh, he's the arbiter of style and aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah, and it was of course it's all it depends on the individual personalities, but in that case, I would also point out that I mean in that opening scene, it was extremely obvious that they were connecting Brian Kinney's persona to Sex and the City
Hmm.
because Samantha being in the PR world as well from Sex and the City, when he comes out and with what he was saying, it specifically emulated what Samantha said when she's like, first the gays, then the girls, and then everyone else will follow. They basically rewrote that line and put it in as for Brian Kinney. So then for anybody kind of watching those two series, you kind of get this, you make the connection right away. You know where they're going to go with it. And Samantha held no punches and was unapologetic as well. And so I think their character arcs both kind of followed each other in that sense.
And I always find it fascinating when he's like seeing what model they'll use for like this launching
Yeah.
of product or I think is it so like you said it's a PR firm. So it's like they always have to have a magazine spread or some kind of kickoff for their campaign. And it looks exactly like Randy Harrison. It looks like Justin, but like an
Yeah.
older
Yeah.
Justin.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's not coincidental.
Yeah.
Um,
No, nothing was coincidental, including like that whole scene was great too, because that's another reflection of who we are and what we're capable of. People don't realize that, like that whole gay world that happens under, invisibly to most people, which is those little cues that he was getting from the guy in the audience. And of course, we're seeing those magnified on screen, but we're like, oh, of course, they're definitely going to hook up in the bathroom. You could feel it coming, and of course they put that in the scene. But that whole life that gay men have, whether it was what they were doing then or what they do today with Grinder and so forth, it's kind of it's shocking sometimes because we're like, we don't want everybody to know what we do.
Yeah. And I find it funny though when you have the coworker uh knowing that Brian is going to try to hook up with this guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that walk that he's going on to the bathroom, that's such a long hallway. I better go chaperone or follow him and help him. And the coworker is so understanding that he's about to, you
Yeah.
know, he's cruised this guy by eating an apple, which very Adam Eve sinful
Yep.
behavior imagery there. And she's like, okay, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. Like, that
Exactly.
this is acceptable in their workplace, I think is just like that to me is the messy. It is kind of an exciting, in my opinion, messiness of the early 2000s or late 90s is like they were trying to always push that boundary of workplace dynamics and sexuality. Um, that I feel now we do have much more of boundaries
Mhm.
of workplace behavior. And like that kind of comes into our TV shows. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't really see a lot of those pushing the boundaries as much in terms of hooking up in the
Yeah.
workplace.
Yeah, it's probably especially now. I think there's just in the overall era that we're in now, especially post Bud Light and Target and all the things that happen there. I think overall you're just going to see kind of a pullback, a very quiet, gentle pullback from a lot of whether it's brands, businesses, or television shows and movies, where they're just going to be like, let's tone that down a little so that we don't become, well, obviously, so we don't become boycotted, but so we don't become part of this conversation. I think they essentially, I mean, is that
Mhm.
the right move? We would look at it and say absolutely not. That's where we're saying, now it's time to step up and show what you really believe in. But you're seeing that, and so in today, when you compare it to what we're looking at back then, you can kind of see how things go forward a few steps but backward at the same time.
Yes. So, okay, Brian, of course, follows this guy. Oh, and I love that line about when the male boss, I don't know who he is, but whoever's in the, he's like a head, you know, older white guy
Yep.
with a suit, who's straight. And he's like, I think that this model, he might be a little too, and then Brian just says, gay. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, gay. And Brian like turns to the women and they're like, I would go to bed with him anyway. I don't care about his sexuality. I did think that was actually a very provocative um and almost empowering moment of the show to say it doesn't matter if this model what his sexuality is, like kind of even meta of these actors in the shows themselves, like it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter if Gail Harold is straight, which he is, but like this is still a performance, like you're
Mhm.
still part of a fantasy. It
Yeah.
was, I thought, really cheeky and like done in a productive way there.
Yeah.
um
Mm. But it also helped identify, I think, with at that time, whether there was terms like metrosexuals and so forth, there
yeah.
was also that whole concept as far as people, the world realizing that a lot of women would hang out with gay men in that sense, and so like hearing that banter as far as like, I don't care if he's gay, I'd sleep with him too, kind of shows that there was a lot of the relationships have very, very much evolved when it came to who we were all friends with back then.
Well, and we hear that all the time with, oh, should that actor, I
Yeah.
mean, we still hear it. And I think that's what surprises me. But right, Matt, you hear that all the time of, especially I feel with gay actors, like, oh, could they play a straight man who's, you know, in love? Like that was said levied against Neil Patrick Harris all the time.
Yeah.
Um, like, oh wow, can he really do justice to this character? But then I do find when it's a straight actor, he plays a gay man. We see that so much repeated
Hmm.
in our culture that I would say it almost ups their resume in a way. Like it kind of gives them kudos of wow, they really um embody that gay man. Like they were believable. But I
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do think there still is a little double standard, if I have to admit it, that when gay men or queer men who are out, they try to go into like the straight acting roles,
yeah.
there's more circumspect or suspicion.
Yeah, no, I think it's tricky. I mean, I think that actors should remain actors, and they could play,
Yep.
whatever role they are best at. But at the same time, I'm not in that industry, and I do know that it's as people say, it's complicated. So, but it came up even in Dallas at one of the panels that was there with. There's a movie called, I think it was called The Mattachine Family, and so you had the director and one of the actors there, and they brought up that exact same thing. So it's a very active conversation in the film festival world and the LGBT film festival world, and all throughout, where everybody's trying to find like what is the right answer or the best answer when it comes to not only LGBT people or straight people playing LGBT characters, but LGBT people having equal opportunity to be able to play any role that they want. And so, that's where I say it gets complicated.
Well, just like Norma Desmond sings in Sunset Boulevard, I can play any role. The only reason it's so in the forefront of my mind is
Yep.
Nicole Scherzinger is killing it right now, I've heard, and I'm like very envious of everyone in London. I like really want to see this production, but because I will message Betty Buckley, and she did a fabulous, one of the best, I think, Norma Desmond's. But okay, that's gonna bring us
You
into a
you have
tangent.
in that statement, you have just earned your gay card.
There we go. See, now I know my Sunset Boulevard.
You
I
do.
have my gay references. Um, so okay. Brian does his work pitch. Now we enter into Justin's world.
Yeah.
And right, we kind of always have the professional world of like the older queer men, and then we have the high school. It's like these two worlds. And he's watching the football players showering. Of course, this is like tantalizing to us. We get the entryway of the jock straps and like the butts in the shower. I mean, I
Yeah.
always just love those interludes. Um, but he is an artist, right? Justin is always looking for observation material for his
Mhm.
artwork. So
Yeah.
I think we are getting his point of view a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it also helps. I mean, it was smart. It's a smart part of the entire story, whether it was the original in Manchester or what we're seeing here, which is just that, when people are watching it, they do like to identify with some of the characters. And so the entire cast, whether there's age range or experiences and so forth, they did a really good job of really kind of having such a broad array of people there. And then, of course, including bringing it to the part. I mean, that's about as young as you can get. So if you want to attract a young audience, that's as young as you can get, is like brushing up on maybe they're seniors in high school, 18 years old, and looking and thinking about sexuality in the way they do in a show like this.
well, and I have to ask you, Matt, because you're not to say you're so much older than I am, but this is like,
How
you
dare you?
are of a different generation, but you are of a generation where I feel like male locker room showering. And like, I was even surprised that this scene is not surprised, but it reminds me of a scene that you would see in like high school 1980s films. Like,
Yeah,
it has
yeah,
that very 1980s. Here's like the football players, they're all showering together because like when I went to high school, we did we had showers, but we actually never like had the time to shower. Like we
oh,
were never actually expected to shower. It was kind of just
oh,
like you're not going to get sweaty enough to shower. The only time I actually showered was either when I went to a gym or when I was, lifeguarding at a pool and had to do like tests for the American Red Cross, like when it
yeah,
really required it. I feel when I was in high school, it was kind of why would you want to shower? Like even when we were changing, there was this even I felt um embedded in our mind of like don't look away, like don't
yeah,
wear revealing underwear. So like to imagine that it was that open, it was
yeah,
very interesting because
yeah.
yeah.
No, you have. I would almost. It's interesting to hear you say that, because I would just say you have no idea. It's just okay. So in the 70s and 80s, you were required to shower. There was no option, and it was really kind of creepy because the coaches would kind of be there, PE teachers, whatever it was, they would be there and they were making sure by watching that you showered. So that always felt a little creepy. You're like, do they need to be watching us? And so all that was going on at the same time. What, you're 12, 13, 14 years old when you're, this all starts when you're in junior high school, what they call middle school nowadays. And but it starts at that point where, you're going through all these things and you don't have you really don't know what's happening, and there's no real reference points, or there's no Ellen on TV to make you feel like, oh, she's going to hold my hand and allow me to become gay, very, very peacefully. It wasn't that easy. And so all this is going on at the same time. And there's all these guys that you kind of been growing up with, and all of a sudden they're all naked in front of you. And then some of them are going through puberty and some aren't. So it's a very, very, very confusing
Mm,
time. And
sounds
there's
like a
a lot of
very
people said about it.
exciting experiment that was happening in the locker room of
Oh,
who went
oh,
through the puberty and who didn't. No.
oh, yeah, it was, because you're like, wow, so that's what I've got to look forward to.
Well, but I do have to imagine, like, I even see this with like middle-aged men at the gym locker room. I mean, I shower openly, and I mean, I'm very like body positive and whatever. Like, I even will wear a jock strap to the gym, and like at first I'm like, "Oh my goodness, how about when I take my shorts
Yeah,
off and like someone would see that I'm wearing a jock strap?" And I'm like, "Who cares, Andrew?" Now I'm at that point, but I
yeah.
do think like the younger generation, we were kind of taught to almost be ashamed of being naked amongst each other. But like what you're saying is, I think it's interesting because I'll see men just there's always that stereotype of like older man is just going to be walking around naked and like put his leg up on the bench and he doesn't care. But
Yeah.
I do think it's embedded maybe from when you were in gym class that it was so acceptable in a way. Like that it's
Maybe,
not
I
just
mean,
about them showing off their cock. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, I would say maybe, because remember when in the middle school era or high school, you're amongst peers, you're amongst everybody your age, except for the creepy coaches that are watching. And so in that sense, there is very little as far as the showing off part. I mean, when I see what I consider, even if it's a like a straight gym and there's some old man and he's just parading himself around and putting his I still think there's a creepiness to that. Unfortunately, like I always feel like there's an intent, and he's just disguising it because he's in a place where you can't call him out on it. You can't say, "Hey, dude, what are you doing?" Because he'll say, "What? Why are you thinking these thoughts? I'm just a guy walking around in the locker room." And you're like, "Well, I kind of feel like I know better than that," but you just have to. So it's this whole like unspoken game, I feel,
Yeah.
with these people. So I mean,
Well,
sometimes they just stand there and pose, like,
it's
just look at me.
voyeuristic. I mean, or they're exhibitionists,
Yeah,
right? And you're right though. I do feel well because every time I usually am at the gym, it's more my suburban Long Island environment. And like there are other openly, gay or queer men there, but it's not like if I was in Hell's Kitchen, a gym there, or it's
yeah.
not like when I'm on Fire Island and working out. But I do think it's interesting because I think there's actually this might sound contradictory, but I find that there's because of what you're saying about the unspoken rules, I actually find that sometimes when there's more straight men, there's like more queer coded behavior than when I know that everyone else is out around me.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
maybe because I'm like, oh, okay, they're out. Like, yeah, they're just flirting. But then I'm like, wait, why is this guy doing this in the sauna? Or like, why is he like walking back and forth from the shower to the locker room? And then it's like, you're like, is he cruising? What's happening?
I think that also is complicated, and the reason is because um, a lot of what they're doing, it's how do you say that? How do I say this nicely? I think a lot of men at the gym, straight men, um, they're working hard on those bodies, and they want it to be appreciated. They want somebody to see the sculpting in their muscles and their chest and what they're doing. But the reality is, and this is the part I might get in a little trouble for, but the reality is that I don't think women necessarily always look at the male body in exactly the same way as a man is looking at himself or thinking that he wants to be appreciated. Sometimes they're seeing something else. So there's always been this homoeroticism in the gym where guys, they want that attention. They want somebody to appreciate the work that they put in, and sometimes they feel they only get that from other men. And so in straight gyms, you'll often see a lot of posing, a lot of these, a lot of actions that you realize they're looking for that attention, including the sauna and so forth. And so the problem is that, as a gay man, you never really know, is this about ready to cross over into something else, or is it just purely for show?
Well, I have so many um straight friends at the gym who like they love that I will openly flirt with them, or I'm like, "Oh yeah, you look so good." And they're like, "I'm
Yeah.
glad I have your approval." Like it is interesting. Now I feel we kind of play it up with each other. Like I think we've moved strides in that way. Um, but I always say some of the most open men, in my opinion, are bodybuilders.
Yeah, yeah,
Just from my experiences, because like you've said, the posing. I also was reading something. I can't exactly find the source right now, but I was reading that um, straight men, they are some of the most obsessed when it comes to penis sizes. And like you're saying, when I hear it from women, women are actually not that impressed with penises. It's
yeah,
more men who are more
yeah,
like we're more impressed with like comparing it to each other. And that's not just gay men or queer men. That's
yeah,
all men.
yeah, yeah,
So I understand what you're saying. I don't think you did it in gentle. I don't think anyone would be offended. I think so many men, they're at the gym, you know, they have that ancient Greek without knowing it. They're
yeah,
performing that aesthetic of what the gym and being nude and admiring bodies and sculpting is all about. Like that's what sculptors from the Renaissance latched
yeah.
onto with the male physique. Yeah. The male physique is okay. So I love though your analysis. Okay. That's what I love about these conversations. I never know where it's gonna head with everyone's expertise as a, queer culture
Yep.
critic. Um, okay, so I love though when we get this line from oh yeah, Justin is talking to Daphne, his like, you know, he's the gay best friend of Daphne. Like we always have to have, the straight friend and she's I mean, there's like the pejorative term
Yeah.
um for, the straight girlfriend of a gay man. But I think that it's so interesting this dynamic and how open Justin is about just having lost his virginity to Brian. He's like, I, lost my virginity, Daphne, and I started as a tight end and ended up as a wide receiver as he's
That was
watching the football game.
that was cute, and and it was also cute that he was really trying to go for some shock value with his friend, and she wasn't, and he was very disappointed in that. He had to come out with a different, some different tactics in order to be able to make her go, "Wow, you did what?"
I know. Well, and we can already like see the seeds
Mhm.
of him really admiring I forget the character's name right now, but he's the football player.
Yeah, yeah,
Um and eventually we'll see it reaches a certain climax, but we're not there yet. So um oh, that's right. And Daphne like says there's that spectacle of gay sex. Like did it hurt? How
yeah.
painful was it? And he's like, at first it felt like a broom was shoved up there. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, I don't think that's a good thing, Justin.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it can be kind of accurate. They're not pulling punches in this show.
that's true. I mean, it was accurate of like losing your virginity. I think especially like, to be a little graphic here, it's as someone who I can admit to it, I am a bottom usually. And I own it. I like my pleasure. So I do think once you start to learn how to like loosen up and there's a
Mm.
certain way that it does not need to happen right away, like you can foreplay and enjoy other aspects. I think when you lose your virginity though, yeah, you're right. I think Justin's ac description, you think that it is going to be painful and it, usually is painful if you don't know that sensation. So,
Well, just imagine for tops that are trying to, experiment with becoming versatile. Maybe they feel that almost every single time, and it's a big factor. So, I mean, you're looking at it from the I'll say it from the sex positive point of view. You're looking at it from the professional bottoms angle. What about for those amateurs?
yeah, I'm looking at it from the bottom gaze. From the bottom viewpoint, not from the tops. Yeah, I have to give the tops their due. Okay.
Yes.
Those poor tops. The things they have to. You do know though, right, Matt? Have you ever heard that um like gay for pay actors or straight men who are
Yeah.
I mean, they're so profuse in uh gay pornography
Yeah.
that so many of them are bottoms because like they have a hard time getting hard as tops. And I was like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I never
Um,
thought about that part because that was very prevalent back in those, the 80s and so forth with Falcon videos and all that. Because there's a lot of money to be made. Those were high end productions.
I think it still is. I think same sex, like men in same sex activities, they make more money. I think the feeling is, well, we could, it's a dime a dozen to find a straight actor to be in straight porn, like
Yeah,
who's a man, but like for them to be in queer porn is, more raunchy or, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, and if
is
anyone out there is in the porn industry, I would like to know if that's changed. I'm not sure, Matt.
well, I think a
Yeah.
lot has changed. I mean, I don't know if they're making quite as many videos that, of course, were VHS, DVD, then streaming. But now with OnlyFans and there's always been a fascination with more amateur, which AKA more realistic style of porn. That at this moment in time, I'm not sure where the lines are in terms of who's the most successful and who's doing what.
Yeah. I mean, I launched an OnlyFans myself. So
I know
I
you're
launched
very
it.
positive nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, I launched it as my unfiltered conversations, but it's also nice to just like feel empowered with putting out my own content. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, there are followers. I have
Uh,
some fans.
I, you just start keep ramping that up, and eventually you'll be able to start having that as part of your income.
I know. Well, hey, anything that continues my, risque, gay, literary, provocateur brand. As you know, Matt, uh, when I eventually secure a publicist, I'll make sure that like it's within my contract. There must be the OnlyFans. Okay. So then we get what I just love is okay. We get that whole encounter of I'm trying to remember. I think it actually happened it happens before the locker room scene, but where Justin's mother finds Brian's jockstrap, or well, she doesn't know that, but
Yeah,
she finds a jockstrap or underwear, and she's like, "That's not my son's underwear," is what you can tell she's thinking
yeah,
internally.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
that was good. And at first, at that moment, it was a little unclear. So I remember even watching it again. I'm like, she's seen that, but is she wondering if that's what her son is wearing now, or where did that come from, or did he bring it back from some trick, and now he just sniffs it every once in a while to bring him back to uh, that wonderful memory.
but I just love that Justin, um, yeah, is nostalgically sniffing the underwear. I do feel like that was a real kinky behavior in that time, or even like when I was in high school, I remember like thinking, oh, to remember this moment, we should like maybe we should keep each other's underwear. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of left our cultural consciousness, but maybe people
Maybe
are
I
still
think
keeping each other's underwear.
I think
I
they've
don't
been doing
know.
that for a very long time. Remember, people there was a lot of stuff that was unknown until the internet came along, and now videos and TikTok and all that stuff that you see and you think, wow, this is like a new phenomenon. Maybe it's been happening and you just never even knew it.
It's true. It's just now being documented and filmed.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so I have here Brian accuses Mike of being a butt plug. Exactly. I just remember that line stood out to me. Um, and I do really love Brian. That's the thing is Brian always gets painted in I think the narcissistic way, like he's greedy, he only wants sex, like he doesn't care about others, but he does really eventually we start to unpack his trauma, which
Sure.
there's a lot there from his childhood. Um, but what he has with Mikey, I think is so beautiful. I just love their friendship. I think it's but do you think it's one-sided? Because I do feel like you could make a critique that
Oh,
Mike
well,
really wants more out of this.
yeah, but that's a great storyline unto itself. But it's also very real, and not just the desire, but also that they balance each other out well. And so that's what oftentimes Mike probably sees in the other in his I was names fall out of my head sometimes, but Brian Kinney. So when he sees with his really close friend, I mean, what he sees though is that he's able to express or do or say some of the things that he probably wishes that he could say or do.
Are you afraid of the dark? Sorry, I had to, everyone. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby. Happy spooky season and gothic and horror, just all the vibes. I am so excited to talk about Broadview Press, who you might know helps sponsor our podcast. They're an independent publisher in the humanities since 1985. Did you know they have so many horror novels that you need to get your hands on? They have Frankenstein, of course, by Mary Shelley. They have Dracula by Bram Stoker, one of my favorites. They have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, Edgar Allan Poe's Poetry and Tales. Oh, they just have so many gothic novels that you all need to soak your teeth into, bob your teeth into. Some kind of Halloween metaphor is appropriate there. They also have academic books like Dr. Jeffrey Andrew Weinstock's The Mad Scientist's Guide to Composition. So if you're a writing professor out there, you need to get your hands on that. And they also have a gift package called Mystery Horror Sensation, which if you don't know what to choose, just choose the Mystery Horror Sensation gift package. Just a reminder, you get 20% off on broadviewpress.com, link in our show notes. Just use the code Ivory Tower, all lowercase. Ivory Tower, 20% off all your books on broadviewpress.com, all of them. I can't wait for you all to hear our next Broadview Press guest. It's coming in November. And definitely, when you buy one of their horror or gothic novels or books, just make sure you tag us on Instagram at Ivory Tower Boiler Room and tag them too at Broadview Press. I know they'll love to share it. Okay, everyone. Be careful if you're reading in the dark. I don't want you to get too scared. Turn a light on. Bye, everyone. LGBT stories are universal, but each one speaks to the individual heart and soul of the writer telling it. Do you have a story to tell? Or have you been moved by an LGBT book, film, painting, television show, or other form of media? Then the Gay and Lesbian Review wants to hear from you. The GNLR believes in bringing awareness to queer art and artists through reviews, commentary, and thought pieces in which the author relates their personal lives to a particular piece of art, a novel, a movie. In addition to the print magazine, the GNLR also publishes articles on its blog. So you can see all of this on glreview.org. That's glreview.org. Remember, you get 50% off your subscription of the GL Review magazine when you use the promo code ITBR50. That's 50% off your print or digital subscription when you use promo code ITBR50. To learn more about submitting an article for the GNLR, visit their writer's guidelines. The link is located at the bottom of their homepage. And if you have any questions, email Stephen Hemrick. That's STEPHEN dot HEMRICK at glreview.org. The GNLR and its readers can't wait to see what you have to say.
And so that's also a part because Brian Kinney not only for all the things narcissistic and so forth, but he's also he loves shock value. He loves to say things, including the butt plug. Everything is all about just like really. In fact, maybe that's his way of controlling an environment or a situation is to shock them and throw them off kilter a little bit, and then he's in control. And so, but I think Mikey likes that, and and vice versa. He's very attracted to some of the qualities of being grounded and so forth that Mike brings to the table.
Just like Samantha Jones. You're right.
Exactly.
I never thought of it before, but they are, two sides of the same coin. And
Yeah.
Sex and the City is pumping hard right now at the same time on
Yeah.
HBO. So these shows are running in tandem. Like you said, I guess it makes sense. Queer as Folk is a Sex and the City spinoff in a way for the queer community.
Yeah.
And I guess that was their branding too. I would say that there's more personalities in Queer as Folk than there are in Sex and the City.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, I never thought
Well,
about that
yeah.
part. Yeah.
Well, even with like, of course, sexuality. I mean, even though we have so many queer men, it is called queer as folk. It's not called, gay as folk or men as like queer men as folk.
Yeah,
But right,
yeah,
queer eye for the straight guy. I got into this with Christian in episode 1. That's around the same time. So like the word queer is even being taken back by the community.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I do really love that we have, such a central female couple. Because this, I do feel the series gets accused of not representing a lot of spectrum of the community, but I do think they start to expand. Like
Oh, yeah,
as the series goes on, it does start to branch out.
yeah,
Um, but they're really you have to, in my opinion, when you do a show, you have to centralize your characters, like find the locus and then build out. Like you can't once you build out. Okay, well, this is a critique I feel right now of a lot of shows, Matt, is that sometimes they try to do so much
hmm,
with a full-fledged cast, like trying to have so much representation. It's not like there can't be representation, but I feel like sometimes they're trying to find every identity, but unfortunately, it doesn't allow for a nuance of a character.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I think, go
No,
ahead.
I
No,
was
no.
gonna say it's tricky. It's tricky in that sense. And like I don't know the answer to this, but I'd be curious to know like what was the ratio of gay men versus lesbians that watched Queer as Folk? Because,
Mm.
they have the two women there and they play a very central role in a lot going on. But was that enough to be able to attract lesbians to be able to feel like they could identify and watch the rest of the show? I actually don't know that. But like you were saying, you can't be all things to all people. And so they found a really, I think, a good balance at that time. But when you watch the L Word and it's all lesbian all the time in that sense, and there's a lot less. In fact, in the modern or the newer reboot of the show, it's not so much male character as it is a transgender male character. So they're really kind of just touching on lightly, bringing gay men into the situation. And so, and when you look at that also, these are lesbians from LA, and they have
Mm.
certain lifestyles that they try to bring to the table, which is very, very much probably doesn't make other lesbians in other parts of the country or the world feel as represented either. So they picked a really good niche, but it didn't mean that they had such broad appeal to make all lesbians go, oh, the L Word is my show.
Yeah, I thought one of the most recent shows that did a really good job, in my opinion, was the new Tales of the City.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I thought, well, I love Laura Linney, but
yeah,
uh Elliot Page is in it, and I thought like the way they blended all the characters worked. Looking, I thought did a really good job with that. Yeah, I will talk about the new Queer as Folk. I haven't actually watched the new Queer as Folk because I've been waiting until I get into
yeah,
this series, but
yeah.
I know that it's a very different take. So,
It's a very pale comparison to what they created back then. It's not a. I watched it and I was just I felt I didn't feel very fulfilled that by the time I finished. I was like, that wasn't really worth my time.
yeah, I mean, right now I'm still looking for a queer focused show
Yeah,
that I think we're always going to turn to Queer as Folk. In my opinion, it's such a touchstone. Like we keep looking back, and it's not going to be what it was when you look back. Like that's how I feel about And Just Like That. I actually thought this season probably hit its stride the best. Um, but they've had growing pains. I'm not gonna lie. It's not like watching Sex and the again, I think to take chances right now, you're gonna put your foot in your mouth. Like people don't want to put their foot in their mouth. It's even if it's for shock value. That's why, like, even Brian saying, Mikey, you're a butt plug.
yeah, I
Like,
know, I know. But this is
it,
like a gold. This is like a golden age of television now, though, in the sense that with all the programming we have through Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu and so forth, and the reality is that there's not always necessarily an all queer show. A lot of them, just a lot of queer characters within the shows. But now we're seeing shows from all over the world now too. And so the amount of the variety and quality and content that we have available to us is huge. And like I said, like everywhere you turn. I mean, I just was watching Ragnarok on Netflix, and it's like another, Norwegian subtitled show, lesbian character put in. So everywhere you go, you're seeing that more and more, which also is a positive reflection of the times, I think.
Yeah, the queer community is now integrated.
Yeah.
And we've now it's been assimilated into the media, into these narratives. Like even I'm watching the new American Horror Story with Kim Kardashian, and Andy Cohen was in the first episode. It's like, yeah. So you're right. I think it's basically the argument is, and it's not an argument, but I guess the binary is, do we want niche like Queer as Folk, or do we want assimilation?
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing right now with the gayborhoods. I
Yeah.
think it's a reflection of this time, um, with what we're seeing in TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you have a movie like Red, White, and Royal Blue, and there is fanfare of the focus of the characters. But again, it's probably not going to have a mainstream broad appeal. So
No, no.
yeah.
It's really funny how that movie came out in so many tweets and Facebook posts, as people felt very passionately about, sharing their thoughts on that. But it was funny because I do respect and understand that some people thought it was one of the most amazing gay films they've ever seen. But I thought it was pretty cheesy, and we watched it with a group of other gay men, and we poked fun at it, laughed at it, but still made it through the 2 hours. But I never understood how some thought that was like such high quality programming.
I think one of the best, everyone out there, if you've never seen Moonlight, in my
Uh,
opinion, I think Moonlight is one of the best queer, especially with a queer black narrative, which we don't see a lot in Hollywood. I thought it was one of the incredible. And even though I know Army Hammer is put under the, you know, put through the ringer and has all those accusations, I still think Call Me by Your Name as a movie
yeah, yeah,
is just so well done. So
I
okay.
agree.
But I am curious. I am about to see A Haunting in Venice. I'm wondering if any of these horror movies coming up are going
Mm,
to have queer representations. We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Maybe The Exorcist. No, no. Maybe the priest is gay.
But
Okay.
as
Uh,
long as it doesn't feel forced, if it feels forced that
yes.
they're pushing it in there, you're like, did they need to do that? But if it's a really good integral part of the story, then it's much appreciated on my end.
Yes. Oh, and the new Interview with the Vampire. I'm going to be
Oh,
talking about that on the podcast. So that's a really interesting. I mean, Anne Rice was always doing queer coding, and
oh
her
yeah,
son is openly gay, Christopher. So
yeah,
yeah, it is. Okay. So there's a lot going on right now. But okay, back to 2000. Okay, so okay, Lindsay and Melanie are having their spat about Brian and insurance money. Melanie hates Brian basically in
yep,
every
yep.
episode. Um, but I do think it's interesting when we get the Brian and Mikey 14-year-old story about Dirty Dancing and Patrick Swayze. Like, what did you think about their like realization that each other was gay? I thought that was interesting of their foundational moment.
Well, that's the whole thing. The show brings to light a lot of experiences that LGBT community has had, growing up. And so that's why I was even saying, having Justin in high school, and then so you're seeing the range of that. And so, the reality is that most of us probably have a story like that in our past, as far as that curiosity and, crossing over into that discovery and boundary. And it was done in a very, it was done in a very good way, where especially towards the end, when you see how it really played out instead of how they were describing it verbally, and you're like, wow, that's it's a touching moment, while at the same time it's kind of a bit of a turn on. So I think it was a very accurate way of showing another aspect of our lives.
Well, and um, if you have another 5 minutes, is that okay, Matt?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So I do feel like I should open up about one of my experiences, which is I remember in eighth grade being on the computer. Like now we're in the advent of LimeWire when I was in middle school. So I had found some, porn,
yeah.
and I'm starting to like just remembering even, oh my gosh, this is like the nude body, and like this is what men can do with each other. And of course, my dad walks in, and I was like, I'm like, oh, it just had popped up. It was a spam ad. I don't even know the excuse. It was complete bullshit. And I like said to my dad, I'm just kind of curious with my sexuality. And he's like, okay.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, I have to give it to my dad. He did not reprimand me. He was just
yeah,
like, okay, well, I do remember him saying, at least you're honest about watching porn. But it's not an accurate representation of sex, or I don't know, it's something to that effect. But I came out when I was a freshman in high school, like the year after. So
yeah, yeah,
it wasn't a surprise, I think, to my parents because they knew I had seen gay porn. But I do remember that like heightened heartbeat of like watching the material for the first time. Or even I remember with my guy friends in middle school when they were like, "Do you know that we can we're going through puberty and that we can ejaculate?" And it was like this mystery of like, what? What happens with the penis?
yep,
And
yep.
like, I'm not sure if that happened to you, Matt, but I remember my like friends, we would each, and it didn't matter that they were gay or not, but like each saying to one another, "Oh my gosh, do you know what I did last night?"
Yeah,
It
no,
it is,
I think kids have been going through that for a very, for a very long time. But I'll also remember that, back in, there's always been outlets. I mean, the same way you're describing, seeing porn for the first time on a computer, for me and my generation, it was we were lucky that there were actual gay porn theaters, but only in big cities. And so I had a fake ID. I went to this gay porn theater in Hollywood, and I remember just shaking going in. I was so scared going into that place and then sitting in there and watching. I remember to this day, it was the first time I've ever seen anything like that on the big screen.
yeah. I mean, and when you, well, even couldn't you go to adult bookstores and like they had gay themes, like gay genre porn?
Yeah, but that really, I would say that blossomed more once like VHS and that, because then you had the content that you would see in there. But prior to that, they probably existed because you'll see that in movies. But I never felt like it was something that I had that much access to.
Yeah. And it is so interesting to me how many um adult bookstores still exist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like they're, they're still going. But okay. So thank you
It
for
took me
opening up
years. It
about.
took me years to figure out what that hole was for. I thought it was a peephole.
Yeah, that's not a people, Matt.
It's not a
Uh
peephole.
but I even remember, was it in Blockbuster? I do remember there was like an 18 and over section. Because
Yeah,
like
but
I would be like, what's behind the door? Like, what is this place? Like,
yeah,
what's
but
the secret?
it's all timing because I worked at Warehouse Records in summer of 1984, and that summer of 1984 was huge. That's when that's when CDs first came out, and VHS. So you had this huge change in a store like that, and so we ended up we had converted a whole section of the store into renting VHS videotapes, and so there you are, where in that realm there was probably like 10 porn movies that could be rented, and those were always rented out because there was, it was just, it opened up a whole new, it tapped into something that had been just waiting to be tapped into, so it was very interesting.
Hi, did I mention that it's spooky season? This is Dr. Andrew Rimby, and guess what? I have so many Halloween and fall designs and crafts in my apartment. And guess what? There is a person who's made me so many Halloween horror fall themed items, and her name is Mandy Bengal. She owns Mandy Made It, a craft crochet company. So Mandy talked to me and said, Andrew, I want everyone out there to know that if they mention ITBR and that they heard my ad, that I will give them a free ITBR t-shirt. So make sure you mention ITBR and order from Mandy crocheted pumpkins that she actually is using cinnamon sticks as the stem, which is a brilliant idea. How cozy. And also filling the pumpkins with potpourri. I already want to wrap myself in a blanket. She has Halloween keychains, other Halloween crochet designs. So, how can you reach out to her? Go to her Facebook or Instagram at Mandy Made It. Reach out to her. She will ship items out to you. If you live in the South New Jersey, Philly area, she'll arrange to have you either pick it up or deliver it to you. So, Mandy, just makes such beautiful crocheted items. And I'm so happy that she supports the podcast. I've known Mandy since I was a child. We were in theater camp together. That's how I met Mary. So the three of us have known each other a long time. Okay, head over to Mandy Made It for your handmade crocheted items for this Halloween and fall. Imagine that you're riding the Turner Classic Movie Great Movie Ride in Hollywood studios. It's in the 1990s. As you're journeying through the Great Movie Ride, you pass the Wizard of Oz, where all of a sudden you see the Wicked Witch of the West ascend into Munchkinland in a cloud of smoke and flames. Well, that's the memory I have with the Great Movie Ride in classic cinema when I was at Disney in the 1990s as a young boy. And ever since that, I was hooked on classic cinema. Well, my friend Christian Garcia, friend of the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, has a podcast that you all are going to love. It's called That Old Gay Classic Cinema, and he looks at queer themes in classic cinema like Vertigo, The Wizard of Oz, Sleeping Beauty, Mary Poppins, 101 Dalmatians, Hello Dolly. The list can go on and on and on. So follow him on Instagram at That Old Gay Classic Cinema. You can listen to his podcast on Apple and Spotify. And he also is on the premiere episode of our Queer as Folk podcast, where I'm rewatching every episode of Queer as Folk from 2000. And the episodes come out bi-weekly. So make sure you listen to his episode with me. And he's launching a rewatch show of Smash, where they're putting on a Marilyn Monroe musical. So he's going to be joined by co-hosts, a lot who are in the Broadway and theater industry, and I'm going to be on his first episode. So, without further ado, get listening to That Old Gay Classic Cinema. Enjoy. Yeah. So then there's this line where oh yeah, Brian is 29 right now, and someone says, I think Mikey, you'll be 30, you might as well be dead.
That's just the gay myth. We love hearing that, especially guys in their 20s. I always think to myself, like, who came up with these things and why did that perpetuate? Because it's being on the other side of 30s, 40s, and 50s, it's not true at all. It especially your 30s, those are some amazing years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just full throttle loving my
Yeah,
early 30s. So
yeah,
you're right. You're finding your individuality, your voice. It's very empowering. I'm even thinking about, you know, having a husband or if I have a child. I'm like, okay, the 30s, these are big moments. Again, you can have a child whenever, but
yeah.
I don't know. They're just these questions are starting to come up more in my mind. Okay. So, oh yes, and then we get Brian when Brian really upsets me, which is he finds, is it the 10-inch cock guy hookup or it's like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
huge cocked guy that he's gonna hook up with in his apartment.
yeah,
Um and he invites him over, and then of course Justin is in need of seeing Brian, and the hookup guy is actually so empathetic. He's like,
yeah.
you can't treat him like this. Like you can't allow a young kid to just leave on the streets without following him. And Brian's like, okay, I guess I'll go after him. But it's
What did you say? You said that made you angry or something? Or
no, well, it made me upset with Brian that he no, not with the hookup guy. I thought the hookup guy was actually really redeeming in this moment. I feel that Brian, again, we could paint him as having no feelings and like he is just viewing every man as a sex vessel or tool for his, you know, outlet and frustration. But I am glad Brian does follow Justin.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
but there's the whole, that's extremely indicative of today's culture. I mean, gay culture. Brian had a hookup come over, and the fact that Justin just decided to have puppy love in his eyes and is confused about where things are going and just shows up. I was on Brian's side. I would have just said like, dude, you have absolutely no, you're really misreading this situation. You need to go. And the fact that it all kind of happened all together, it was very well choreographed for the show. But I think that's very typical as far as how people feel. And a lot of gay men, I got myself in trouble when I was picking on gay men for using Grindr to be able to order in for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a few snacks in between. And I thought maybe that might be a little too much. And this guy looked at me and said, felt he was being judged. And I said, "Oops, sorry, I didn't realize that you were one of them that that ordered in a few times per day." But but to the
Ordered
straight
in.
but to the straight world, that's crazy because they're like, you guys do what? And so that's where seeing that scene, it is reflective of not all of us, but some of us, and a lot of, and in the gay world, a lot of them.
Yeah, well, I absolutely, you know, love that Brian is always eager to like, have his choice of a man
Yep.
and like you said, enjoy his meals.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think Justin, again, I'm starting to feel more for Justin now because we're getting the picture of him coming out
Yeah.
and he's young, like he's 17. And I think I'm looking back at my 17-year-old self and like I lost my virginity at the same time Justin did. And I just remember what it was like when you really were invested in thinking that's like this sexual awakening meant like a long-term relationship. And it
Yeah.
doesn't in a hookup sense. But Justin doesn't know that, right? I feel for Justin.
Yeah.
But Brian, I do have to say, you can tell um Brian says our hookup, that's all it was. It was just a hookup. And I don't believe in love. I believe in fucking. That's what Brian says to
Yeah.
Justin.
Yeah.
Um, again, you can tell though Brian doesn't really believe that. Like he's just saying the lines. Like this is what he thinks he's doing. Like
Yeah.
he's just fucking, but there's something different with Justin. Like you can tell Brian is feeling a way. Like even when he looks back at Justin crying,
Yeah.
he's not, you know, he doesn't mock Justin, he just stares at him. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
No,
I think they're preparing us for something good.
exactly. It's all in the character development.
And it's a good character development. I think it's such a strong bond in a
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of what I miss in today's television. I miss that almost edging in a way, like they're edging us towards something. I feel like sometimes we get it too quickly. Like we just get they're in love, and I'm like, wait, but what happened to get them in love
Yeah.
together? Um, so how did you feel, with Justin fleeing the scene, crying?
Oh, I mean, of course you feel bad for him because that's, you can't help but not to. But at the same time, I would just like, it's just sadly, as he's young and it's just all part of his growing pains that in many ways we all had to go through some version of all that over through our years to make us who we are today.
Yes, yes. Oh, I had many crying moments as an undergrad when I thought I was in love with a man and it did not turn out that way. I mean, I think you never um again, when you put yourself out there romantically, you're going to have rejection or you're going to cry. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's sad. I wish we could stop each other from feeling hurt, but you're
Oh
right.
yeah.
And there are men that we really are invested in and they're right in front of our eyes, or men who are invested in you. I mean, I've had those moments and I feel for those men, but I'm like, I just don't feel that way towards you. And it
Yeah.
hurts them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
So
don't want to hurt them, but I also want to be honest.
yeah. No, it's the human condition.
Maybe I'm Brian. Oh no. It's all
maybe
coming to terms.
maybe
I
the
do have
power of the
someone coming over right now, Matt. I just
maybe the power of the show is that there's a little bit of Brian in each of us.
That's true. Okay, well, I think we have to end this so I can meet up with 10-inch cock hookup guy at my door. Just kidding. Oh God, that moment though. Oh my God, and then Justin accuses this hookup guy. He's like, and he's ugly. And I'm like, whoa, Justin.
He's hurt. He doesn't know how to, he's just lashing out.
I know, I know. Oh, well, Matt, this has been such a good time.
Same here.
Um, anything you want to, plug, how to follow you, share it all out with everyone
Yeah,
since
no,
you
we're
have a
very,
captive audience.
especially with something like this. No, we're just on social media. We have the I Love Gay Network, and so especially with this, we have a Twitter profile, I Love Gay TV, that's very prolific on sharing and amplifying these sort of messages and stories out there. And so, yeah, find us, follow us, and we just really appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here with you.
Well, this was wonderful, Matt. So thank you so much. I have a link in the show notes to Matt's YouTube show, podcast, I Love Gay Today, Pink Media, all the things that Matt does. This has been wonderful. Can't wait to see what happens in episode 3. I have a feeling uh this is just the beginning of shit
Yep.
hitting the fan with Justin and Brian, which every episode, Brian and Justin, it's going to be rocky.
Yep.
Always. Okay, well, thank you, Matt, and bye
Thank
to the
you.
audience out there.
Take
Until
care.
next time. Hi, this is Dr. Andrew Rimby. I want to thank you so much for listening to the ITBR and TCIA episodes. Make sure, if you don't, follow, rate, and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure you follow ITBR on TikTok and Instagram at Ivory Tower Boiler Room, and TCIA on TikTok and Instagram at True Crime and Academia. Also, we have a brand new Patreon membership system. So I just want to explain it to you all quickly. So if you want to become an ITBR student, it is $5 a month. You get ad-free ITBR and TCIA episodes and video interviews. If you want to become an ITBR professor for $10 a month, you get all of those ad-free benefits, but you also get access to both the ITBR and TCIA book clubs. You can join both book clubs, get ad-free episodes, plus you're going to get all of our extra video episodes. So I am rewatching Queer as Folk. Christian Garcia from That Old Gay Classic Cinema is joining us, and he's rewatching Smash. Mary is going to start to rewatch shows as well. You even get access to what I'm calling the ITBR Teaches. So if I'm recapping a movie or a TV show, including Barbie, Halloween movies and horror films, you get access to that as well. And then I also am offering consultation services. So for $30, you get your first initial consultation with me. It's a 1 hour private Zoom. I will help create your podcast, your media brand. How do you navigate academia as an undergrad or a grad student? Do you need help with technology? It could be teaching tools, Spotify for podcasters, video editor software. Do you want to expand your social media presence as an artist, writer, podcaster, or academic? Do you want help on how to create a public humanities identity like I've created for myself? So I'm offering that consultation service. You can find more info about it on Patreon. And you also can join our book clubs. If you want to just join the ITBR book club or the TCIA book club, you can do that for $4 a month. Patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. That is patreon.com/Ivory Tower Boiler Room. Thanks to the team, Mary DePippi, our chief contributor, and thank you to our 2 new interns from Stony Brook University, Jonathan and Sarah. Bye, everyone. Until next time.